Breaking news, breaking news, breaking news, everyone. JLR investigates. We are live. A scene right now, Times Square, New York. Come on in, folks. Mayor Eric Adams and NYPD Commissioner Jessica Tisch just spoke a little bit ago, a public safety alert talking about the crime in New York City. They're talking about deploying 200 additional officers into the subway system of New York. They're also talking about in the future to deploy officers into certain zones, hotspot zones where crime is occurring. They claim by summertime they're going to deploy 1,000 NYPD troops to these zones. That's talk. They give a update about crime in New York. They claim that crime is down 5% in New York in 2024. We are in 2025, ladies and gentlemen, and the NYPD is claiming that crime dropped 5% in the year of 2024. They claim that in 2023, there were 391 murders in New York. And in 2024, it dropped down to 377. They also claim 48 fewer people were shot. And they claim this is due to their policing. That's talk. Do you believe it or do you not believe it? We're going to bring Magnolia in the chat shortly. This is a live look at Times Square. Times Square, they just had New Year's. Looked like everything in New Year's went okay this year. Thank God. Hello, Magnolia.
Hello. Hi,
Hello.
everybody.
All right. So before we get started to listen to Eric Adams and Jessica Tisch, the new NYPD commissioner, has been on very shortly. Would you like to add or say anything?
Yeah, I just noticed that lately we're hearing a lot from Jessica Tisch and Mayor Adams about crime in New York. They continue to hold press conferences talking about the crime rates being lowered. It seems like they're fighting a PR battle because the perception among most people is certainly not that crime has gone down in New York. I don't think people look at New York and say, wow, the crime's really gone down there. I don't think anyone is really saying that because a lot of these crimes that we've been seeing lately are really egregious. The woman being caught on fire, and there's just a lot of these incidents that we've covered a lot lately that are very visible, and people are seeing these things happen in the subways all over the city. So the mayor and police commissioner seem to be trying to tout their successes and let everyone know, actually, the crime has gone down, and here's how.
Yeah, so we're going to listen and hear what's up and also play some clips of some incidents, very viral, disturbing incidents that have been occurring throughout New York City in just the last week. It just continues to happen, yet they think it's safe or they think it's safer. So we'll let the people decide. We'll listen in. This is like I guess this is like a yearly press conference they give to give updates on crime in general in New York and their plans for the future. So we'll take a listen and let the viewers decide. All right, Magnolia, you got to get it up on the thing we're showing here. We're going to put it up here shortly.
Yeah, hang on a second.
Come on in, everyone. Let's listen to Jessica Tisch, Eric Adams. I actually enjoy Eric Adams's press conferences.
Good afternoon, everyone. There are plenty of details to discuss in the 2024 crime data, so we'll get right into it. Overall, index crime in 2024 was down under Mayor Adams' leadership, with reductions in 5 of the 7 major crime categories, including murder, robbery, burglary, grand larceny, and auto theft. This translates to 3,662 fewer incidents of major crime last year than the year before. And these are not just numbers. We're talking about thousands of people who were not injured, abused, attacked, or targeted by criminals. And notably, homicides, which came in at 377 victims last year, have declined for 3 years in a row and are now at a 5-year low. Our work against gun violence reduced both shooting incidents and shooting victims for the 3rd straight year. The result was the 4th lowest year for shooting incidents citywide in the Comstat era, stretching all the way back to 1993. And in 2024, shootings in the geographical borough of Brooklyn were the lowest they've ever been since Comstat began tracking them. Certainly, some of these gains can be attributed to the work of the women and men of the NYPD who have taken an unprecedented number of guns off our streets since Mayor Adams came into office in January 2022, nearly 20,000 of them. That's approximately 3,000 more guns off our streets than the 3 previous years. Major crime in public housing was down 4.5% for the year, and major crime in our transit system was down for the 2nd straight year in 2024, decreasing 5.4% compared to 2023. We are now about 13% below pre-pandemic index crime levels in our transit system. I want to be very clear. The subways will always be a bellwether for the perception of public safety in New York City. Declining crime numbers are significant, but we still must do more because people don't feel safe in our subways. Effective this week, I've directed that we move more than 200 officers onto the trains to do specialty train patrols. And I have further directed that we deploy more officers onto subway platforms in the 50 highest crime stations in the city. It's all part of a strategy to refocus our subway efforts to the places where the crime is occurring. We know that 78% of transit crime occurs on trains and on platforms, and that is quite obviously where our officers need to be. This is just the beginning. This month, we will roll out substantial additional improvements to our transit deployments to be even more responsive to the terrifying acts of random violence we have seen recently. I will have more to say about that soon. Despite the gains made against crime in 2024, there were 2 index categories up last year: rape and felony assault. For rape in particular, there are 2 things to note. The first is that starting on September 1st of 2024, the law changed to rightfully redefine and broaden what constitutes rape in New York State. Also notably in 2024, nearly half of our reported rapes were domestic violence related, and this share is up from recent years when it hovered at about 35%. We know that rape has historically been underreported, and we encourage all victims to come forward. The other major crime that increased in 2024 is felony assault, which was driven by assaults on our officers, domestic violence, and stranger attacks. Now I'm going to address the current trajectory for index crime. And the headline here is that we are trending quite well. Overall, index crime in the last 3 months of 2024 was down 8%, led by reductions of 12.1% in grand larceny, 13.1% in auto theft, and 13.4% in robbery. This past December, major crime declined in every patrol borough and was down 15.5% overall. And in the first week of January, major crime is down 20% citywide. Crime reduction in 2024 was also paired with significant increases in engagement by our officers, with major felony arrests reaching a 26-year high. I want to be very clear. The crime reductions we saw last year were achieved against all odds. and are entirely attributable to the hard work and the grit of New York's finest. The deck has been completely stacked against our cops, and there is one glaring issue: surging recidivism. If you compare 2024 to 2018, we see a 61.3% increase in people arrested for burglary 3 or more times in the same year. That increase is 83.3% for robbery. And when we look at felony assault, an index crime that was up in 2024, that increase is a staggering 146.5%. That is what we're up against, and we know why. The key driving factor is the revolving door of our criminal justice system, created in large part by legislative changes that took effect in 2020. Case in point, last month, a career criminal robbed a Queens deli at gunpoint before shooting and injuring a responding NYPD officer and a 26-year-old innocent bystander. The shooter had 17 prior arrests, 17 of which happened while he was out on lifetime parole, including arrests for robbery, burglary, and menacing within the past year. Let me repeat that. He was arrested and then released over and over again while on lifetime parole. This is evidence of a broken system, one that doesn't put the rights and needs of victims first. And the problem is compounded when you look at misdemeanors. They are up 20% compared to 2018. But importantly, at the same time, for these very same crimes, the rates of decline to prosecute are up a staggering 31%, and the rates of bail set are down 54%. Imagine how disheartening it is for our cops to be out there arresting the same people for the same crimes in the same neighborhoods day after day. And how scary it is for New Yorkers to see the same person who victimized them one day walking the streets the next. There are no mental gymnastics required here. When you see toothpaste behind lock and key at a local pharmacy, or public urination, or people shooting up on the corner with impunity, it doesn't have to be this way. New Yorkers demand and deserve better. In the meantime, despite these headwinds, the NYPD will continue to innovate. Chief LaPetri and I are both data-driven people, and now we are going even deeper into the numbers. When the CompStat era began, we thought about crime at the precinct level, but we know that a small percentage of people in a small number of areas are responsible for a large portion of violent crime in our city. So now we're in the process of developing CompStat books based on zones, specific segments of neighborhoods, blocks, and even certain streets where we see spikes in violence and disorder. In a precinct like the 8-4 in downtown Brooklyn, which does not have a significant amount of violent crime, precise zone-based deployments are very effective. The data showed that nearly 30% of the precinct's major crime complaints stem from one small area of the command, in particular, the Fulton Street corridor in and around the courts. A disproportionate number of retail thefts were also reported along this corridor. So about 6 weeks ago, we dedicated extra resources there to combat it. Since then, theft in that zone is down, arrests are up, and the residents and businesses there are happy to see their cops on the corner. This success will be repeated citywide. And right now, about 650 additional officers per day are deployed to high crime zones across the 5 boroughs, a number that extends to 1,000 officers per day in the summer months. And in these areas, we've seen reductions in index crimes and shootings, along with increases in gun arrests and overall arrests. It's clear that cops on patrol make our city safer, and the next step is getting more of them. Tomorrow, 624 additional police officers will hit the streets. Later this month, a new class of what is likely to be more than 1,000 recruits will enter the academy. The last time that this department hired such a big class was nearly a decade ago. These much needed additions to our ranks are just the beginning. We are laser focused on attracting and training new officers to join the greatest police department in the world. Before I conclude, I want to thank Mayor Adams for his unwavering support of the department and the women and men of the NYPD for their noble work over the past year. They should be incredibly proud to count themselves among New York's finest, and they will always have my gratitude, my appreciation, and my full support. 2025 is a new year with a renewed focus on strong ethical leadership and doing this job with honor and integrity. Thank you very much. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Commissioner. If we could go back a few slides. Go back. Go back. Go back one more. It is clear perception always overrides reality. And when you looked at some of the horrific incidents that the commissioner talked about in these last few days, the average New Yorker would believe that they're living in a city that is out of control. That is not the reality. And we know that we are doing a good job in fighting crime, as the numbers would show, but we must deal with the perception that many New Yorkers feel. Quarter 4, December, 15.5% decrease. Week 1 in January, 20.2% decrease. Are the police officers working? Felony arrests up 7.2%. Go forward one slide. Here's our fight. We said this over and over again. There are too many people who have made up their minds that they are going to inflict violence on innocent New Yorkers. Burglary, 61.3%. Individuals committing 3 or more of the same crime in 1 year. 3 or more of the same crime in 1 year. Felony assault, 146.5%. Grand larceny, 71.2%. Auto theft, 118.6%. Robbery, 83.3%. Shoplifting, 64.2%. There are 3 components to the criminal justice system. Police officers are one part of the criminal justice system. When they do their job over and over again, and the other 2 aspects are not giving them the support that they need, it gives the impression that no matter what we do, we're never going to be able to stop the crisis. These officers are working. They are producing a qualitative product, but we need every part of the criminal justice system to play their role. And these numbers here of recidivism clearly shows that there are far too many people who are repeatedly committing the same crime, not in a lifetime, in 1 year. In 1 year, they are repeatedly going back out again. Do you know what that does to Ms. Jones on her way to school? And she was robbed on Monday, and she's walking down the block, and she see the person that robbed her back out on the street, robbing her neighbor? It destroys your feeling that your city is taking care of you. Police officers are, but the other aspects of the criminal justice system must do their job. I was clear from day one, not only on the campaign trail, but when I became mayor, the prerequisite to our prosperity is public safety. And I was committed to driving down crime. And we know in these last few weeks, there have been some horrific incidents that really left New Yorkers shaken and believing as though they can't be safe in their city. We're the safest big city in America. The numbers are clear. We're seeing what the numbers are showing us, what we can do, but we know we have to tackle that perception. And it starts with dealing with a real issue, mental health. People should not have the right to sleep on the street in tents when they need care. We're in court right now fighting that basic principle that there is nothing humane by allowing people to sleep on our subway systems and on our streets. We need help, and that help must come. My conversation with the governor this weekend, she's clear and focused that in her budget, she's going to include an aspect dealing with severe mental health. But let's go back to January 1st, 2022. We finished a year where there was 1,876 victims were shot and 1,562 shootings, and there were 488 people killed. But today, as I stand in front of you, living up to my commitment of ensuring that this city is the safest big city in America, we had 903 shootings last year, 377 homicides, from 488 back in 2022 down to 377, and from 903 shootings from going from 1,562, almost cutting those shootings down almost in half. And the same with the number of victims as we move forward. We're trending in the right direction. This is a more than 42% reduction in yearly shootings and a 23% reduction in homicides since this administration began. But we didn't stop there. 6,100 guns off our streets last year alone, 20,000 illegal guns out of our neighborhoods since this administration took place. But we went into the crevices of those things that drive crime, not just in shootings, but we took 8,000 ghost cars and 27,000 ATVs and two-wheel vehicles off our streets, with a total number since this administration started of over 80,000 of these vehicles that were used in robberies, assaults, hit and runs, creating devastation in our city. But it was not only about fighting crime. Think about this, 4,000 protests with over 300,000 demonstrations. We had to ensure that people were allowed to protest peacefully without destroying property and without destroying our city, and these officers successfully carried that out. Then we went after the illegal shops. We stated, if you give us the power, we'll close them down. We closed over 1,300 illegal smoke shops in the city, put in place an initiative called Community Link, which brings multiple agencies as well as community partners together to address quality of life and public safety concerns. We want to do more, and we will do more. We invested in upstream solutions like education, affordable housing, after school and holiday school program, and early intervention. Our public safety strategy is working. It's not just the New York City Police Department. It is every agency in the city playing their vital role as we continue to ensure that crime trend downward in New York City. Overall index crime, as the commissioner mentioned, is down 15.5% in December. And December's crime reduction was the biggest single month crime decrease since February 2021. That's since before we even came into office. With murders down, with robberies down 27%, these numbers reflect a crime and reduction. And we have just really started to roll out some of the new initiatives that Commissioner Tisch is clearly going to oversee to make sure that we continue to move crime in the right direction. And so we know how New Yorkers feel. We know each time they hear of a terrible incident that takes place in the city, how it impacts them. Nothing is more horrific than watching a person burned to death on our subway system. We know how individuals feel when they're shoved to the tracks for no reason at all. We know how it impacts us. We know we have to continue to show the visible presence of the omnipresence of our men and women in their uniforms. But we are taking a proactive and a reactive approach. Men and women who wear the blue uniform and provide public safety, they are one part of every aspect of our criminal justice system. It is time for us all to understand we have a role together to ensure that this city maintains this to be the safest big city in America. I join the commissioner in thanking the men and women of the New York City Police Department, and I thank her for her leadership on ensuring, as I expected, that we could do more. We could go further and we could do better. We don't want to only be the safest big city in America. We want to be the safest city in America. And we could do that with the right leadership, the right commitment. We have the product in our men and women who provide safety every day. And now we're asking for all aspects of the criminal justice systems to join us in this pursuit of ensuring New Yorkers are safe. Thank you very much.
We understand there's possibly an overtime crunch within the NYPD. If you're scaling back on overtime, how can you cover places like the subway system?
So with overtime, we are putting controls in place to make sure that we responsibly manage city resources. The controls that we have put in place will by no means affect our staffing on the New York City subway system. What we've done on the New York City subway system is we've put more officers on straight time as opposed to overtime. We've assigned them to the subways and in that way have reduced the amount of overtime we are spending on the subways.
So, excuse me, two quick questions on the crime numbers specifically. The mayor just said that overall index crimes are down by 15%, at least in December. You put up a slide, Commissioner, that showed overall index crimes in the subway down, but by a much smaller percentage as to what the mayor just said. So, question, how do they compare the overall? I didn't see a slide on that. And then the larger question that everybody's going to be asking is simply that you mentioned it, there's a fear out there. How do you specifically, personally respond if you would say, oh yeah, I know the numbers are down, but I heard an incident. My friend said he saw somebody, a homeless guy urinating. What do you say to those people who they actually are safer, but they don't feel safe?
So let me start with the first part of the answer to your questions on the numbers. Last year, overall, index crime in New York City was down approximately 3%. In the subway system, index crime last year was down 5.4%. The point that the mayor and I were making earlier is that later in the year, our trajectory is actually quite good right now because, for example, the first month of February, we saw crime down 20%. The last December was a great month, and also really the past 3 months have been great months. As to the question on perception, I get it. I am a mother, I have parents and people I love walking around the streets of New York City. And what I can say is we have a several part strategy here. The first, as you heard me discuss, is we are hiring lots of cops. We're going to swear in 624 of them tomorrow and send them on their way onto the streets of the city. And then later this month, we are hiring the largest class that the department has hired in about a decade. And we are committed to finding and training talented, dedicated people who want to do the greatest job in the world. So that's important. We know that more cops works. We saw that in 2018, right after Commissioner Bratton hired 1,000 additional cops. We had one of the safest years on record. And so that is definitely a part of the strategy. But we also see, you heard me talk about the zones. When we identify problematic zones based on our data, what do? We flood them with cops. And we see the crime in those zones come down. So I think the two things together, the hiring additional officers and then being more precise on our data where we're deploying our cops, those two things together are going to make a difference. And we know that because in the past they have made a difference.
And let's go back for something you said that's very important. You mentioned it, you probably don't even realize it. You said that people feel when they see people public urination. We didn't pass the law that make public urination no longer illegal. We have far too many people who are making decisions without understanding the impact on the ground. Ms. Jones, she does not want to come out of her house and see someone urinating publicly. Why did we make that illegal? That didn't come from the police department. It didn't come from City Hall. We are in court right now because we don't want our city to look like some of the cities where encampment cooking on the streets. We cleaned up the encampments in the city. We're in court right now fighting because individuals are stating that they should have a right to sleep on the streets. We didn't pass the law that say people should have a right to sleep on the streets. There are decisions that are being made that are impacting on the quality of life. But New Yorkers are looking at police officers saying, why are you allowing this to happen? When police officers are not responsible for these laws that are being pass. We all must be on the same page. The desire of the public must match the desire of the laws that we're passing. Good. How are you?
Good. So you mentioned a few measures that you think could continue to drive down crime in 2025. And I think we have a good idea of what you want with the involuntary commitments. There's a bill, there's legislation, the governor's on board. I was wondering, can you give us any more details about discovery reform and what part of bail reform specifically you think would help changes there? For example, there was a legislation introduced that would sort of cap the DA's access directly into the NYPD's database. Some people think that would speed up the discovery process. Would that do it for you? Are you looking for something else? And can you tell us what you're thinking about bail reform?
Yeah. And this is not about bail reform. I want to be very clear. Many of the initiatives that were pushed in bail was what I advocated for, not only when I was 100 Blacks in law enforcement, but when I was as a state lawmaker. This is about recidivism. We just looked at the chart that showed us there's a small pocket of people that are repeatedly committing crimes. The focus we're talking about is recidivism. People conflate that and start talking about bail. This is not about bail. This is not about bail reform. This is not about the advocacy of it. This is about recidivism. Going after those recidivists. And you saw the number of decline to prosecute. Those decline to prosecute, those are not just cases of someone stealing an apple. These are serious crimes. Because the district attorneys have stated the discovery rules are making it too challenging, and many of these cases are being dropped. So we need to look at the discovery, and we need to look at recidivism of repeated offenders that in one year that are doing 3 or more crime. Some of them are doing 2 or more crime. They didn't even make the chart. So if we focus on recidivism and when we focus on the needs that the DAs are requesting around discovery, we can have a major impact and push it down crime.
Is there a specific legislative way to get at the recidivism? What are you thinking of as far as changes to rules or policy that could help with that?
Those are the conversations our team is going to Albany. When we go to Albany, we're going to sit down. We did a proposal last year and the year before that specifically talked about those repeated violent offenders. We're going to present that proposal again and show these numbers. These numbers don't lie. They're very clear. We're going to show these numbers, and we're hoping that we can see that this is about recidivism that we're talking about.
As far as the governor's push for that legislation on involuntary commitment, do you view that as a long-term solution? How significant?
There are several components that we need to look at when we talk about those who have severe mental health illness. And if you do an analysis of some of the stories that you've covered, you've noticed these random acts of violence that many of you have heard me talk about often. They fit into the categories of people with severe mental health issues. The individual who stabbed 3 people, many cases of people being pushed on the subway tracks, of women being punched in the face. It's the same profile. And we need to focus on, number one, getting a comfort level in our mental health institutions of saying that we can't just continually turn people loose, give them medicine one day and turn them loose. That is just not working. So we have to change the mindset there. Dr. Cass from H&H, he understands that. We need to codify in law to make it easier to do involuntary removals. And then we have to have a real conversation about the 4 jails that we are looking to build in the city. After closing Rikers, 51% of the inmates there have mental health issues, 18 to 20% have severe. We need a state-of-the-art facility that can house those with severe mental health or those who have outpatient treatment as well. So there needs to be a holistic, not a Band-Aid approach to really address the severe mental health issues that we're seeing plaguing not only the city, but plaguing the entire country. It's a good starting point what the governor is proposing. We need to see the final legislation to make sure that is going to address this issue in a real way, but she sees this as being important. And my conversation with her this weekend shows that she's ready to move in that direction.
Can I ask
Mayor, how are you?
Good, Craig. How you doing?
I'm doing just fine. So just building on what Joe asked about, I know we've talked about discovery. It's something that DAs are uniformly in agreement with of that needing to get changed. This is why a case is being dismissed. But when it comes to these repeat offenders, these recidivists, the things that you're saying is driving crime throughout the city, all these different categories being up. All of those crimes, if you are a recidivist, you can have bail set. So if it's not bail reform, what are you looking for here? Are you looking for, if you're a repeat offender, you get arrested 3 times on the same charge or a lesser charge, are you being remanded? What are the options on the table here that you want to bring to Albany? And then that's kind of where we're lacking specifics here.
Yeah, and that's what we raised last year and the year before when we started seeing patterns of repeated offenders that is really impacting our ability to continue the success that we've witnessed. So we're looking at those again. This is not really a complicated solution. We're looking at those who are repeatedly committing crimes. That is our focus. Our focus is to zero in on the numbers that the commissioner showed us in those various major crime categories, to zero in on them and hold them accountable for their actions. That is what we're stating. And we presented a proposal for 2 years in a row, and we're going to revisit this conversation when we return to Albany. We're turning it over to you. I don't want to do anything that's going to jeopardize the negotiation we're having with the state lawmakers.
Thank you. Maybe a follow-up, maybe not. Commissioner, when you do highlight the bail and the declination to prosecute, is it only a matter of state law matters, or do you think there's a lack of will on the part of any of the prosecutors? And second question is, I know you don't specifically track stabbings, but do you have any way of articulating or understanding whether stabbings are up, down, sideways, any way you might be able to
To
characterize?
answer the question on stabbings, we actually have Chief LaPetri on the phone. So, Chief, if you're there, can you speak to stabbings?
Yes, good afternoon. So stabbings, we have seen an increase in stabbings, especially over the past 3 years, increases of year-over-year stabbings pretty much across the city. So yes, the answer is yes, we do see an increase.
Are you finding that the declinations prosecute are just a matter of state law, or is there a lack of will on the part of the district attorneys?
I need to look deeper into it. I don't want to assign one or the other, but certainly the decline to prosecute is a real issue for us, in particular as it relates to misdemeanors.
Hello. Hi, Mr. Mayor and Commissioner. I have 2 questions. I wanted to know where you plan to surge the cops. Is there any particular stations that you can speak to now about that detailed plan? We noticed that in Manhattan North, there's a couple stations there that seem to have high incidence. I also wanted to know, what is it about the surging of the cops, the 200 or so that you mentioned, different than what has been happening in the last year? I know that in the last 2 years, the governor has put National Guard in the subway systems. The mayor has put more police on the subway systems, but this perception of being unsafe in the system has continued and perpetuated. So I'm just wondering what makes this plan different than the previous one.
Sure, I can take that. It's where we're putting them in the system. So we know that 78% of crime in transit occurs either on the trains or on the platforms. And so that's where the majority of our cops need to be, not in the mezzanines, not at the entrances. That's not to say that we won't have cops on the mezzanines and the entrances, but we need our cops assigned where the crime is occurring.
Hold on, because you said something, and let's be clear on. We did an initiative where the governor did the subway safety plan. We surged 1,000 cops in I believe in February. The goal was to bring down crime. We did that. so it was a successful plan. When we, with her support, with the initiatives that were put in place. Our goal was to bring down subway crime with well, I think we up to about 4.5 million riders daily, and we probably have an average of 6 crimes that takes place in the subway system. So the goal of bringing down crime, we accomplished that. These high-profile random acts of violence has overshadowed our success. Where our subway system is on the numbers is an impressive place to be. We have been overshadowed by some of those actions. So now what the commissioner is stating and doing, now we have to deal with the perception. Watching that cop walk through the subway, seeing the president, having the conductor announced as the police officer on the train, all of the things that it will allow New Yorkers to feel the omnipresence and feel safe. But we don't want to walk out here stating the initiative we did with the governor with the subway safety plan failed. It did not. It brought down crime. It brought down robberies. I think the numbers of robbery is some of the lowest we've stated. Crime in the subway system. You got to go back to 2009 if you remove the pandemic numbers out of the scene. So we were successful in our plan of making New Yorkers safe in the subway system. Now we must make sure what the commissioner is doing, we need to make sure New Yorkers are feeling safe. That is what we have to match with the success we've done with the crime numbers.
You've talked a number of times in recent weeks about the importance of the community, people saying something, doing something. While the specifics are still not clear, there seems to be great concern in immigrant communities around the city about what President-elect Trump's deportation plans will look like. What sense are you getting, if any, at this point? I know it's still early, from your NCOs and precinct commanders about concerns raised by the people they're policing, and are you worried that you're not going to get that type of cooperation either from victims willing to come forward or witnesses who are willing to come forward?
I want to be very clear that at the New York City Police Department, we follow the law. And the law is quite clear as it relates to civil immigration enforcement. We also are very focused on anyone in New York City who commits crime, and in particular, violent crime. And our efforts, including through, for example, our HSI task force, which focuses on violent crime, will continue and be redoubled.
The other part of that, victims and witnesses need to make arrests, find suspects.
And we've been very clear that we will follow the sanctuary city law in New York City.
Charles? Commissioner, you spoke about surging officers onto the trains, and then you also spoke about overtime controls. Can you help us understand what the overtime controls will be,
Oh, yes.
and why they weren't implemented in 2024?
I can't speak to the past, but what I can say about the present is we have articulated very clear overtime controls and reiterated that it is the responsibility of managers in this department and certainly executive leadership in this department to manage and focus on overtime. That is nothing new. And that is the case at any city agency that you work at. I dealt with the same issues at the Department of Sanitation. As far as the subway is concerned, we are surging officers. We are not increasing overtime spent in the subways. In fact, we're decreasing overtime spent in the subways by assigning officers to work in the subways on straight time as opposed to on overtime.
Last question. Please, 12, go ahead.
The question, I'm not understanding. You're saying what were we?
In overtime. Just wondering if you have any insight into why those controls weren't in place in 24.
Yeah, there's always overtime control. Can you do it better? Similar to what the commissioner did in the Department of Sanitation, she brought down overtime to the substantial level. And I don't believe, as long as I was in the police department, in government, that the question does not come up about overtime all the time. We were dealing with the unprecedented level of where we needed police officers. As I gave you the number of protests we had, that impacted a great deal of people. And if you would interview the average cop, unlike when I was a cop, they don't want overtime. They want to go home. You know, these cops, their number one complaint is that why do we have to do so much overtime? So it's not like cops are trying to get over on the system. After October 7th, we had a large number of protests. We still have our everyday terrorism threats in this city. The number of things our officers had to do as we boost up our manpower in the city, and as the commissioner is realigning what officers are assigned, it takes more than the normal hours of the day that these officers are assigned, and that's why we're changing many of our deployment strategies and what we're doing. Folks, let's be clear. We had 1 billion people use our subway system. 1 billion. 1 billion. With those billion, we dropped crime in the subway system by 5.4%. That's what we've done. You can't put a price on public safety. New Yorkers will be safe. That's my number one priority, and I'm going to continue to do that.
Rates are up citywide, specifically in the Bronx. What is the city doing to address sexual violence in particular?
I discussed this a little bit in my remarks, but importantly, we're seeing an increased percentage of the number of rapes in New York City be associated with domestic violence related incidents. And that tells me that we have to, among other things, certainly take a good hard look for the first time in a while in our domestic violence efforts. And that is something that I am committed to doing. We've also done a great job, I think, over the past 2 years of addressing issues related to headcount in our special victims unit. I've just assigned 25 officers into that unit to make sure that we don't dip below the historically high numbers that we have seen, and we will continue to make sure that the case level in our special victims unit remains at under 60 cases as it is now.
Well, that was interesting. Come on in, folks.
Yeah.
Tisch and Eric Adams. Crime is down, they claim. Back at Times Square, it looks very peaceful out there this evening. Just had a little bit of snow. What's the first thing that comes to mind to you, Magnolia, when you listen to that, and what their plans are?
Yeah, I mean, it's what I said at the beginning. They and Eric Adams touched on, he's pretty much said the same thing I said. They may have lower statistics right now, but that's not the perception that people have. And public perception pretty much wins every time. So they're trying to do these press conferences and talk about the numbers, the data, different things like that. But a lot of people aren't really receptive to it just because of what we've seen with our own eyes in the past couple of weeks. So yeah, the public perception is that New York is just the most dangerous city you could ever go to, and no one wants to be in the subway. And plus, we see all these videos of the subway all the time where there's craziness happening. And the videos go viral. They're all over social media. And so they're trying to combat that with data. And I don't know if people are buying it, but one thing I do know is Commissioner Jessica Tisch has only been on the job for a little over a month. And a lot of New Yorkers are very happy with her because they see her cleaning house. Just in the past couple of weeks, there's been several people that she has fired or reassigned or something along those lines. It was about a little over a week ago, on a Saturday, when she made so many moves. It was kind of like, whoa, what just happened?
I didn't realize that 1 billion people have traveled the subway. Is that in a year? 1 billion?
Yeah, I mean, and that's yeah, I mean, he's trying to put things in perspective. I mean, this is a city with millions and millions of people that gets visitors and everything else. That there's literally millions of people every day in the city, and it is overall relatively safe. Like if you go to Times Square, things look. I mean, look, it looks fine, right? But it's really hard to counter social media, the viral clips, the outrageous crimes, because it's not just like petty crimes that we're seeing go viral. It's insane things like people being lit on fire in the subway. But yeah, it's good to have perspective, which is there's literally millions of people here every single day, and like he said, they've had 1 billion visitors. And so when you put it in that type of context, um, it is, he keeps saying it's the safest large city in America, which, it's interesting to me though that according to their data and the stats that they keep talking about, the crime has gone down, like in certain categories. But when you think about it, it seems like the crime would have skyrocketed given the hundreds of thousands of migrants that have been dumped there in the past couple of years. So I think it's actually a miracle that they have gotten a little bit lower, but I don't think it's enough to where people are like, okay, we feel safe now. I just don't think it's enough so far.
So what do we have here? We have a couple clips. What's going on? Like in the last week, we got all types of crime going on still. Some very egregious, high-profile cases, subway stuff, suspects. I mean, what is going on here?
Yeah, there's been several incidents in just the past few days, but I don't think we've covered all of them. But it seems like every day we hear about something new.
Let's share what's going on.
Here's a clip about a postal worker. Someone else in the chat earlier mentioned this incident. So we have a clip on that.
Encounter turned into a scene of a deadly stabbing.
A postal worker was killed and one woman is under arrest this morning. Let's get right to Good Day's Briella Tomasetti. She is live outside that bodega in Harlem. And Briella, investigators believe this all started over who was next in line to order at that deli.
Yeah, Tashani and Dan, good morning to both of you. All literally over a sandwich. That woman, the suspect identified this morning as 24-year-old Jaya Cruz. She has been charged in the murder of 36-year-old Ray Hodges, who, was killed on the job yesterday. He was stabbed to death here in the deli behind me in Harlem. Now, Cruz could be arraigned on second-degree murder charges as early as today. Let's get right to her being escorted out of the 28th precinct yesterday. It happened shortly before midnight. Cruz was covering her face with a black hooded sweatshirt and avoiding questions from reporters. According to police, the attack happened inside Joe's Grocery on Malcolm X Boulevard and West 118th Street at about 2:30 yesterday afternoon. Hodges, an on-duty postal worker, was found with stab wounds about the body and rushed to Harlem Hospital, where he was pronounced dead. Police confirming with us this morning that the stabbing followed an altercation over a spot in line and that a knife was recovered at the scene. Neighbors tell us they ran into Hodges all the time on his daily route and are in complete disbelief that this even happened.
I know the guys who deliver mail, and just like that, he's gone. It's very scary. Anytime you wake up, anything can happen. You can just, like they said, it's an argument, so you can just say hello to somebody and you stab. Something like that. It's disheartening, to say the least.
Cruz lives just down the street from this bodega, while Hodges lived up in the Bronx. We are still waiting on word in regard to her arraignment, when exactly that will happen. The United States Postal Inspection Service, though, released a statement on behalf of Hodges' his murder, his death, saying that the the United States Postal Inspection Service will be working very closely with the NYPD in regard to this developing investigation. But for now, we're live here in Harlem. Dan and Tashani, we'll send it back to you.
All right, Bri.
Wow, she was tall. Cruz, see her coming out
Yeah.
over a sandwich, a line at a deli. Scary.
Yeah, that's insane. Yeah, we keep hearing about all these stabbings. I think in New York, like, it's pretty difficult to get a gun in New York, although there are plenty of shootings in New York, but a lot of these crimes we hear about lately are stabbings. There was a guy the other day, wasn't there a guy who went like on a stabbing spree recently?
Yeah, that was an individual in the subway system, or it was at the station, Grand Central Station, and he stabbed 2 people back to back.
Yeah, I have a clip on that, I think.
Why'd you do it, Jamar?
There he is.
You have anything to say to the victims, Jamar?
Oh, that's another one.
Guys, gotta keep moving. Guys, go. Clear the stairs. Why'd you do it, Jamar? What's that, sir? Why'd you do it? You have anything to say to the victims, sir? Back up, come on, guys. Anything to say at all, Jamar? Guys, take a step back from the car. Guys, back up. This way you gotta. Sir, back up. Guys, one step back. Jamar?
Crazy.
Anything to say to the victims, Jamar? Why'd you do it?
That's crazy. I got that confused with another one. This is another one.
Yeah, so this guy right here, Jamar, he stabbed 2 people the other day, and he was on the loose, actually, for a while. He was on the loose, but this is the person, some people in the chat may have heard about this. He has had over 50 arrests, just in and out, just always doing these things. And so this is just another example, this guy right here, of, they're catching the criminals, they're charging them, they're putting them in jail, but they're not staying in jail. They're being let out on cash bond, no bond, whatever it is. And he's just a perfect example. He's in and out constantly. I forget the number, but I actually heard also 87. People have said 87 past crimes, and this would be his 88th. I've also heard the number in the 50s, but in any case, that's insane. How is this possible? How do you have someone like this running around free when they've had dozens and dozens and dozens of arrests for crimes before?
Yeah, even the mayor acknowledged that there's a broken criminal justice system, and I think their frustration is with these criminals. They do the policing, they arrest the criminals, but the prosecutor or the criminal justice system lets them back out.
Yeah, that just keeps happening over and over again.
Yeah,
and that's what they talk about. That's what they mean when they say recidivism. It's just a revolving door.
How do the reporters know where to be when they bring them out? And where do they bring them? Like, where are these criminals be held at? Are they held at little jails within certain areas and then they let them out and escort them to a car to go to a judge or something? Because the reporters are always there lately.
Yeah, I think they have contacts that probably tip them off of when a perp walk is happening. This guy, he stabbed 2 people in the subway system, and then he was actually caught in a different station. I think it was the next day, but he was on the loose for a minute.
Wow. Who else? Who else do we got next in the pipeline? Crazy stuff, man. But I just want to say that there's another issue going on that just came into effect about this congestion toll tax that a lot of controversies. New Jersey tried to sue over it. Apparently now, in order to enter like Times Square or Manhattan, you got to pay $9 per vehicle during peak hours, which I would assume be during the day, rush hour, and motorists have to pay. It's like a congestion tax. A lot of people feel like that is the way to drive people into the subway system because people can't really necessarily afford that $9 a pop every time on top of tolls anyway. You got tolls coming in anyway. And it's a way to actually drive people into the subway system to get into Manhattan. And then other people are also saying it's not necessarily a congestion tax, but it's a way to generate revenue because they are in a fiscal, more or less, I'm not saying a fiscal crisis, but they, had some financial problems in the last couple years. And one of the reasons is the migrant crisis. You got to pay. You need money. They need money. So,
Well, yeah, but I think it's important for people to understand the backstory on the congestion tax. So the congestion tax went into effect last night at midnight. It's $9 if you drive into Manhattan. They have these scanners that basically take a picture. So the congestion tax is something they've been trying to implement since Michael Bloomberg was the mayor in 2007. It was previously known as the Central Business District Tolling Program, and it was originally proposed by Michael Bloomberg. Part of his plan he had called Play New York City 2030. I guess he wanted certain goals by 2030, but it never got passed until 2019. And so in 2019, the New York State Legislature passed the law authorizing the pricing, and it was signed into law by Andrew Cuomo when he was the governor at that time. So since 2019, there's been a lot of lawsuits, a lot of pushback. People don't want this, obviously. But since then, it was implemented. Governor Kathy Hochul has been instrumental in getting this implemented, and she announced in 2023 that it would be implemented starting now. And so they're using this, it is a revenue stream, but I think it's important that people understand they didn't just come up with this overnight. This New York State has been trying to do this for the last 15 years or more. So, it took a long time for them to go through because people don't want it. It's a lot of money. It's expensive, and it's going to cause other problems. I know New Jersey has pushed back significantly because they believe people will, instead of, bringing their congestion to New York, they will simply park in New Jersey and come in that way. Just take the train or the subway in from New York. And so New Jersey feels like this is really going to impact them, and they're not happy about it.
Yeah, we'll see what happens out of that, because I think, once New York does this, expect congestion taxes in on other major cities. So I expect that to happen somewhere else. They'll follow the model. So it's just going to cost, under the guise of people think this is climate change. This helps reduce carbon emissions in the air of Manhattan, congestion tax and things like that. We'll see what comes out of that, but. I personally would just stay out of Manhattan, but that's me. That's me. What else is going on? What else do we got here in New York? What else has been going on in the last week?
Well, we had another incident where someone got pushed on the subway.
And this time in the subway system, a 23-year-old man is being charged with attempted murder after yet another random attack in the subway system.
The suspect, who is well known to police, apparently is accused of pushing another man onto the tracks. This all happened in Chelsea right before the celebrations last night. Good Day's Haley Fixler is live in Chelsea with the very latest. Haley, what do we know?
Hey, good morning, Dan Tashani. Kamel Hawkins was arrested less than an hour after the attack that happened right here at this subway station yesterday afternoon. Now, the victim is alive this morning. We're told that he has some serious injuries. I do want you to take a look at this video. This video was given to us by someone who says that they saw the 45-year-old victim who was standing on the platform looking down at his phone. And that's when we're told Hawkins came up behind the man and pushed him just as the one train pulled in. Now, you can see in this video, firefighters were able to get the man out from underneath the tracks. He was immediately taken to the hospital. Subway riders are disturbed and scared for their safety.
I have my 15-year-old with me, and I was like, step a little bit further away, and every time I looked down there, I was like, this is something that could happen.
That was it for me. I didn't need one more. And we're not doing 3 strikes. 2 strikes, that was it.
That's why I stand back most of the time.
And this is video of Hawkins handcuffed and being escorted by NYPD out of another subway station in Columbus Circle. Police say this attack appears to be random. And this comes 1 week after NYPD says a 72-year-old man was at the Herald Square station and was pushed onto the tracks. Now, that man was helped back onto the platform by bystanders. Police and Crime Stoppers, they are still searching for that suspect. And of course, earlier this month, a gruesome crime. A woman was set on fire and burned to death on an F train by a man police say illegally entered this country. Now, hours before this most recent incident, Mayor Eric Adams touted the safety of the city and of the subway system. Take a listen.
Crime is not surging in the subway system. We have some high-profile incidents, and we're really disturbed about. But overall crime is lowest. And actually, if you take away the 2 years of COVID, I think 2021, the last time crime was this low in our subway system was in 2009. These officers are doing a job, but we know people not only have to be safe, they have to feel safe. And that is why we surged 1,000 officers in January in our subway system for that omnipresence.
Now, on social media, Mayor Eric Adams did address this most recent crime. In part, he said that this was an appalling act of violence, and his heart goes out to the victim and their family, and he's praying for their recovery. Live in Chelsea, Haley Fixler. Back.
1,000 troops, or 1,000 New York City police officers plan to get deployed into the subway. You heard Tisch say in that press conference, I guess immediately 200, and then by the summertime, 1,000.
Yeah, didn't they say that they're, and she also said yesterday, or she said at the press conference that they just had like 600 some new police officers that they are about to put on the streets too. So more police officers, but a lot of it is replacing some of the officers that left. I mean, there were a lot of officers who quit, resigned, moved on. So I feel like a lot of it is replacing some of the people that they had before. But yeah, it seems like they're kind of going all out here to put more officers. And remember, we talked about the National Guard in the subways, although we didn't see signs of them when the lady got burned to death. So
Man, that guy was crazy. You know, we didn't show the image, but literally a guy was just standing there. I guess he was fiddling with his phone and just got pushed right in front of a. I mean, that's insane for someone to do that. That's animal. That person there, I guess his name is Hawkins, last name Hawkins. He shouldn't see the light of day ever again. That's life.
Yeah.
No matter if the victim's still alive, correct?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a life sentence right there. You can't just push someone onto a tracks in front of an incoming train. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
That's sick. Why? Just why? Why would somebody do that? Why?
Crazy. Shouldn't be on the streets.
What else do we have? Anything else going on?
Yeah, here's more info about the officers being deployed to the subway.
The whole thing is kind of a conflict for the MTA. Consider this. On one hand, it wants all that money from drivers paying congestion pricing tolls. On the other hand, it also wants fewer commuters on the streets and more on the subways, which for a lot of people are kind of problematic. Today, NYPD Commissioner Tisch adding more than 200 New York cops to the trains and platforms for safety. That's on top of the hundreds already on patrol underground. But many say they need more than just 200 extra new cops. So what to do about all this? Safan Kim in Lower Manhattan, he's live with the latest. Safan.
Well, Bill, the mayor and police commissioner say it's not the fight against crime that they're losing, it's the perception battle, they say, the way people feel. And to fix that, they're announcing a new strategy, and it has to do with where they deploy cops underground.
Hell no. I gotta worry about getting pushed by someone if I don't know them and random homeless person. Okay. I don't feel safe.
I've never felt less safe to be here. It's just been a pure mess.
It's hard to blame riders for the way they feel these days underground. But Mayor Adams says don't allow the latest headline-grabbing subway assaults to fool you.
Nothing is more horrific than watching a person burned to death on our subway system. We know how individuals feel when they're shoved to the tracks for no reason at all. The average New Yorker would believe that they're living in a city that is out of control. That is not the reality.
Instead, the mayor says, look at the numbers. Subway crime is down more than 5% from a year ago. December is down more than 15%. And he says January is trending to be down more than 20%.
We need to make sure New Yorkers are feeling safe.
And with that, the police commissioner today unveiled the latest strategy to tackle high crime zones.
Effective this week, I've directed that we move more than 200 officers onto the trains to do specialty train patrols. And I have further directed that we deploy more officers onto subway platforms in the 50 highest crime stations in the city.
But what's different this time around? The commissioner says it's about where officers will be deployed. According to the NYPD, nearly 80% of subway crime occurs on trains and on platforms.
So that's where the majority of our cops need to be. Not in the mezzanines, not at the entrances.
As for the mentally ill, Governor Hochul says the mayor backs her plan to involuntarily commit and remove some of them from the subway system.
I think it's going to be really important for us to get those changes to give doctors the ability to allow someone to stay longer without cycling them back in the street.
Now, the governor says she will announce her plan next week. As for surging the system with cops, the commissioner says this will be done without adding to overtime, which she is trying to rein in. As for what kind of impact this will have by moving cops from the entrances and mezzanines to trains and platforms, what kind of an impact it'll have on fare evasion enforcement, that part is still unclear. Reporting live at One Police Plaza, Safan Kim, Channel 7, Eyewitness News.
All right, so it looks like they're going to be riding the trains.
Well, you know, I just have something to say there about Kathy Hochul because she pledged that she was going to reopen a certain number of beds for mentally ill people in the state of New York. And she has fallen short on that goal. She has not achieved that goal. And one of the biggest problems that I see on the subway, when you just look at random videos that people post all the time, you know, you see in certain subways down there on the benches, you'll see like all these homeless people, mentally ill people, they're drug addicts, all down there just congregating inside the subway. Down, they'll just be laid out on the benches. You see them in the trains. Just watch videos of the subway. It's all you see. It's just like mentally ill people on drugs. So I don't understand. I was looking at a video earlier today, and I'm just like, why don't they clean this up? Like, why are you allowing these people to just set up shop in the subway like this? It's as if they live there.
Yeah, we're going to be paying attention for the next couple of months to see if this works, what happens. The mayor's trying to say just these headline grabbing incidents, but overall the subway system's safe. That's the message that they're trying to say here.
Yeah. Yeah, but people aren't seeing it, and instead what you see is what I just described. I mean, you look at videos of the subway and it's just bizarre, mentally ill people like zombies roaming around in the subway cars, roaming around down in the bottom of the subways, like they just set up their house there. That's where they live. It's crazy. And then they act surprised when you have these wild crimes happening down there.
Yeah. We have one additional clip. The Guardian Angel, the leader of the Guardian Angels. What's his last name? How do you pronounce his last name? Sliwa?
Yeah, Sliwa, Curtis Sliwa with the Guardian Angels. We touched on this last week, but they basically announced that they're back in business. They're going to be patrolling the subways again. And we have a clip here, I think, where he talked about that a little bit more.
NYPD arresting a man accused of at least 2 stabbings on the subway last week. Jamar Banks facing assault and weapons possession charges after he was accused of stabbing an MTA employee Thursday and another man on New Year's Day. We're now learning the suspect has been arrested, drum roll please, 87 times. Joining us now is the founder of the Guardian Angels, Curtis Sliwa. Curtis, you've been in the subways, you tell me, since 1979. Now you and your team are back there. What brought you back there? Cases like that?
It's never been worse, Brian. And we have a combination where when you descend into the subway, it's a combination of Dante's Inferno, Clockwork Orange, and Jack Nicholson in The Shining. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. This guy you're talking about, 87 priors, not hard to find.
Living in the subway.
He lives on 2 lines. He only is a creature of habit, rides the 2 and the 5 train with a knife in his hand. The cops lock him up. D.A. Bragg, you know his name, cuts him loose time and time again. He's a threat to everybody in that subway system. Then they put out an all-points bulletin. This man is extremely dangerous. Well, let me tell you something. Everyone is in danger on the subway. Look at that woman who was turned into a human torch.
From New Jersey.
Debrina Kawam, cheerleader, all-American girl, the Jersey girl. See, when I'm dealing with the homeless and emotionally disturbed, which is what we Guardian Angels do because they're the forgotten people, they're Americans. And migrants, they put up in hotels. Americans, they allow to sit in their squalor and ride round and round. We don't help them. And when we talk to them, we find out they're people just like you and me who just had a hard time, and now they're forced to live on the subway. And our officials, our governor and our mayor, do nothing.
But not only that, they are bragging. Governor's cut a video showing how great it is on the subway, bragging that we have cameras in every subway. Good. Now we can video the assaults as they happen, and the attacks
and then
as
do
they
nothing.
take place.
Right, and then do nothing.
So the NYPD can't staff an academy like they used to.
Right.
So because not enough, we don't have enough cops on the subway. It's all related to the fact they're not backed up by the mayor, by the and the governor, because there's no qualified immunity. You're going to get sued if you put your hands on anyone. There's cameras everywhere trying to get you.
Right? Imagine you're a cop, toughest job in America in New York City, because you can't do anything. And you find out instead of putting $1 billion back into your budget, which they took out when de Blasio was the mayor and they were dancing the whore and the tarantella, they gave $5 billion to illegal aliens. $5 billion. and they gave nothing to the cops. So imagine you're a cop. Do you want to stay in New York City? You're being recruited from all over the country where they're offering you a much better pay scale. They treat you better, and they let you be a cop. We have flight, not just of people in New York City and New York State, but desperately needed cops. Put the cops back in the subway. You won't need guardian angels. And stop fare evasion. Because if you just let people come and go into the subway, you're going to have more of these problems.
Just let me just full circle. Congestion pricing, first time in America. By going into the middle of a city, you get charged $9. You go back and forth. That's pay coming out of your pocket. They want to force people into the subways to get them off the streets. And that's where the crime is happening, which they can't curtail.
Yeah, well, give everybody who goes into the subway a bulletproof vest and have them an individual police officer. Like Eric Adams, the mayor, has 12 with him, armed cops. Like Kathy Hochul has 12 state superintendents. These politicians are delusional. They'll tell you, Brian, it's your perception of crime. Perception. What a boom, slap in the face to everybody who's got to take the subway and pay their taxes.
So he's back in the subways. He's been there on and off when needed since 1979. Says it's worse than ever before. That's a permissive DA backed up by George Soros, who was just given a Medal of Freedom award over the weekend. Thanks so much, Curtis. Great to see you. We'll see you on WABC.
My pleasure. Bye.
All right.
Curtis ran for mayor. Interesting. They said the same theory I had. Congestion tax drive people into the subways, into the dangerous subways. You better have a bulletproof vest.
Yeah, really.
So
I mean, I think it will. I think it will have that effect, but I think it's going to have a lot of other side effects as well. I do think New Jersey will bear the brunt of a lot of it, but we'll see how it goes. It just went into effect last night. So the guardian angels say that they're back on patrol. Now, as far as we know, they are a volunteer group. I don't believe any of them are paid to do that work, but they volunteer and go to different parts, and they say they're going to start patrolling the subways. I don't know if anyone has seen them down there yet. I haven't seen any videos of them actually patrolling yet, but maybe we will see that soon.
Just a side note, I have a guardian angel friend that lives in the Tampa area. They're chapters all around the country. And he's already reached out to me last year, and he's like, hey, if you ever need a bodyguard or someone to join you on your stuff to help and protect you, count me in. I'll be there for you. he's you know, and I think he was serious. He said he'd come along with me if I ever needed help on a dangerous assignment.
Yeah.
So, so, this is New York. This is we giving you a glimpse of what's been happening. Some really egregious, bad crimes. It's been quiet the last day, I think. I haven't really seen anything crazy. As you see, a live feed right here of Times Square. Congestion tax is in play now. We heard that press conference, which was today. Crime update, their plans. They talk about the crime. They claim the crime is down. We shall see. It's New Year. We got our eyes on New York, particularly after January 20th. We'll see, with this migrant ICE deportation, with maybe the migrant shelters being shut down. We'll see what happens in the subway system, whether it's the police, National Guard, that Hochul claims she sent out there. We'll just pay attention for sure, like we've been doing. So we wanted to give everybody an update, kind of fill you in on what's going on, provoke thought. Let us hear your comments. Let us know what you think. Do you believe Mayor Adams and Commish Tisch, or do you think some of the truth, not truth? What's your thoughts? Any final words, Magnolia?
Yeah, I think it's just clear more and more what we're seeing in New York. A lot of it is because you have opposing ideas. You have the city council who absolutely refuses to roll back the sanctuary laws that, they just completely flat out refuse to do it. They don't want the cops participating with ICE or anything like that. And on the other hand, you have the mayor saying that's what he wants. He's trying to get that done. They don't want to do it. And then, you have Kathy Hochul pushing all these policies that people are not agreeing with. And it just seems like there's so much conflict back and forth, and no one's really working together for a certain goal. And to me, it almost feels like Kathy Hochul is just living in the past, like she's not understanding the temperature right now. She just seems completely out of touch, I think, to most people. She's down there in the subway saying how safe it is, literally hours after a woman was burned to death. And so she comes across as extremely out of touch. Some of the stuff that she's pushing makes no sense. Even the policies and goals that she set, that she committed to, she's not reaching those goals. So it's just constant conflict, and something has to give. I think one big thing that happened recently is they sort of brought these migrant programs to a close in New York. They gave them a 30-day limit on staying in the shelters. They're not doing the gift card, the Visa cards with the money and all that. They're ending a lot of those programs. So, if they're able to start participating with ICE when they have these repeat offenders over and over that are here illegally, if they're able to finally turn those people over, they can get rid of a lot of those repeat offenders that shouldn't even be in the city in the first place. But I think it's going to take some time. I don't think that it's going to fix itself overnight. I think it's going to take time, and we'll see if the citizens are patient or if they decide to vote these people out.
Well said. Well, all right, everyone. Stay safe out there. We will be staying out of the subway. If you choose to go to a subway, or you must, remain vigilant. Please.
Yes.
Please don't walk around those tracks with your back turned, because these people are nutty down there. They're straight lunatics down there. There's people released from mental hospitals, drug addictions, mentally ill people, migrants. There's all types of criminals. There's all types of people down there. So just be safe.
Yeah.
We don't want to be talking about you on JLR Investigates.
Mm-mm.
All right, folks. We cover true crime 24/7, 365. Be safe out there. Happy New Year, everyone. And we'll be back soon. Of course.
Yep. All right.
Take care.
See you later.
Have a good day, everyone.